All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Reef Spawn Week 4 virtual session on communication. So before we start, I'd like to introduce you the first speaker of the day. We have Mr. Yao-Hua. He is a freelance science journalist and a co-founder of Macaranga, which is a journalism portal covering on environmental and sustainability issues. He was also a fellow of the Rainforest Investigation Network with the Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting. Mr. Yao-Hua, thank you so much for joining us today. You'll be covering the topic on science communication. The floor is yours.
So it's kind of weird. As I was preparing this talk, I was thinking do you guys want science communication or do you guys want science journalism, which is what I'm actually a lot more comfortable speaking about of late. But I get it that I think you guys really want to do science communication. So I would try to straddle both fears because they're kind of different, but I'll try to straddle both fears. All right, okay, I'm gonna share screen now. And let's see if you guys can see my PowerPoint, right? And only my PowerPoint, I assume. Okay, I don't hear any no. That means you guys can.
Yes, we can see it.
All right, okay. So yes, if at any point, right, after this talk, you wish to contact me, to clarify some things, or if you, better still, if you wish to pursue a career in science journalism, I love that. Yeah, drop me an email or talk to me on Twitter or Facebook. Twitter is the best. And I'll always be ready to help. Always happy to help you in any way I can. So, but I'm going to start by actually, I guess, tell you what science journalism is, and then I'll move from there into science communication, because there are similarities in both, and there are lessons that you can use from journalism into science communication. So science journalism, right, when it is done well, you as a reader, when you read a piece of a science story, right, you are getting information. So that's the intellectual part, but that's not really enough. That's the base. That's the basic thing that a science journalist wants to convey is the information. But what we want to do is to give the readers, to engage the readers on an emotional plane, right? To touch their feelings, to trigger them to feel something, to either feel for the issue, to feel for the problem, or to feel excited about the solution, or to have some empathy with the, I guess, the characters in the story itself. And of course, we are talking, when I say story, I'm not talking about like, Harry Potter, make out Lord of the Rings story, right? I'm talking about actual things that happen, real events, real people, real conversations, real impact, real consequences, right? And so we want them, when journalism is done well, the readers, they don't just get information, they don't just understand the issue, but they actually feel it. And that's very important, because only when they understand and they feel it, then can they relate to it. And then for me, the journalists have very different school of thought. But for me, myself, I feel like my role as a science journalist, as a journalist, is to help readers, to help the general public make better informed decisions about their own lives. So I am not the type of journalist that go out and say that you should do this or you should do that. There are some journalists like that. But I just feel like my role is to present it all very well, truthfully, and help them understand, help them relate to it, and then they themselves make the decisions. For example, to log or not log a forest reserve. That is not my decision to make unless I am living there, right? Then I have a real stake. But I just present it so that the people there and the policymakers and the people who live in and by the forest reserve, they are able to decide for themselves whether logging or not would benefit them the most, and then they can voice their opinion or push for certain action. So, when we bring that into environmental problems, right, which is what we all care about here today, is to me, I feel that most of the environmental problems, that exist because of two things, and it is here that communication, if done well, can help solve. Now, these two things are ignorance and inaction. in the people, right? Ignorance and inaction in the people. And ignorance and inaction, right? I think they can be fixed if we provide something, right? What do we provide? If we provide the people with the information, the intellectual side, information that's easy to understand, right? Then they are no longer ignorant, right? Then they know, right? They know. It's like when people, you know, when I first went overseas, right? And I tell people that I'm from Malaysia, right? Very often, really, I mean, the Canadians, the Americans, they do not know where Malaysia is, right? You have to say Thailand or something. But then I just, you know, open up a map, and then you show them, right? Then they know, oh, okay, yeah, it's, you know, Malaysia is south of Thailand, right? And above Singapore, it's next to Indonesia. All right, then they know. They're no longer ignorant. But then that fixes the ignorant part. They can know something, but they still don't take action, right? I can know that there are lots of corruption going on in logging, perhaps, or there is, you know, for example, you know, a plan to develop an airport on Tioman Island, for example. I know that's happening because I read it on social media, right? Some of you are busy tweeting about it, but you know, it doesn't mean I'll take action. It doesn't mean I feel anything. It's like Tioman. I haven't even been to Tioman. I can't even afford to go Tioman, for example. You know, I can only go nearby. I can only go PD, for example. So I don't feel it. So I don't take action, and that can be fixed if we are able to engage the readers, our audience, the public, on that emotional plane, right? And then what we want to do is for them to be able to relate to the issue, to relate to the people who are perhaps afflicted, you know, who are going to suffer because of an action, or to the injustice of it all. Or it could be a very happy thing. It could be a very joyful situation, and still we want them to relate to that so that maybe they can take similar actions and feel the joy and repeat the joy in their own lives, right? So ignorance can be fixed with you know, providing the intellectual side, the information, and inaction can be fixed by touching the reader's emotions. But how do we provide these intellectual and emotional parts? So you know, it still comes in your science communication, right? We tell a story. We tell a story. In journalism, this is what we always strive to do. We tell a story, right? And what's a story? A story basically, it has all these intellectual and emotional parts, right? But if we break it down, a story to its most basic form, and again, there are different schools of thought about this, but the most general, most common, most universal one you would see is this one here. It's what we call a conflict resolution change, and that makes up a story, which is somebody, there's always, you know, at least one actor, or actor doesn't mean man or women, it's just an actor, right? A wants something, so A wants X, but then it's stopped by Y. It could be an event, it could be a person, another person, you know, it could be a natural disaster, but regardless, there's an obstacle, right? A wants to get X, but then it's stopped by Y, so in response, A does something, A does Z or Z, and by doing that something, by taking that certain action, by responding to the obstacle in its reach for, you know, X, A is no longer just A, right? A becomes AA, sort of, right? There's a change. There's a change. So, and that change is important because it is what we all feel, right? And if you think of any story that you like, just any story at all, even from the earliest story you have heard as a child, for example, maybe Cinderella, or I don't know, Goldilocks or whatever, or Pak Pandil's kind of a story, right? Or Sang Kanjil crossing the river, you know, has stopped by the river, stopped by the crocodiles, you know, but still crossed it. All of it, right, it's like somebody wants to do something, there's a challenge, there's an obstacle, that person responds, either overcomes it, or perhaps they fail to overcome that challenge. But regardless, there is a change in the person. If there's no change in the person, it's not real, like we don't feel it, right? Because this is what happened to us in our real lives. Every day this morning, for example, me this morning, I want to look good on camera. But then my hair, right? My hair is terrible. My hairdo is terrible, right? I haven't been to the barber or the hairstylist for a long time. So that deters me. So what do? I try just to, you know, style it, you know, use the gel that I've not used forever. and then I become, I don't know, slightly more confident or whatever. I decided that whatever, I'm just going to, brave through it. And so there's something in me that changes, right? I go from, become from nervous to, okay, slightly more confident or things. So it's what we are able to relate. If we give lots of information without giving a conflict resolution, it really lacks the emotional part of it. It lacks it, and it's not engaging. It's not engaging, right? It's like reading a press statement. Well, unless the press statement has something like a diarrhea, right? Then there's like, something that we can relate to. There's like a problem, right? He wants to go to office, but he couldn't go to office because he had a diarrhea, so he ended up in the hospital. But then he overcome it by, still doing conference from the hospital. So we can actually relate to that. It's actually a lot more engaging than the usual press statement, right? So you see that. And but when it comes to science communication, it's really the same thing. In science communication, what we want to do, for me, from my point of view, and based on my sort of like my experience and analysis of all the communication that I've ever done or has ever been done to me, it's really just to persuade, right? And by persuading, it's not different from all the things that I've shared with you before, right? Those are all means to an end, right? To help the readers make better informed decisions of their life. That's my goal. And it's the same thing as saying that I'm persuading the readers to make better informed decisions of their lives using the information, using what I am sharing with them. So I'm persuading them right at the most basic level. I'm persuading my readers or my listeners or my viewers to believe me, right? To believe what I'm reporting, to believe what I'm writing, to believe that when I say Ali goes to the market, Ali memang did go to the market, right? If I'm not able to persuade them to believe me, even in that simple sentence, then there's no point, right? Then they might as well be reading a novel, and which is not what we do. You are not writing a novel. I'm not writing a novel. We are doing actual real stuff, right? Real things that happen. So this persuading, right? To me, all communication is persuasion. And this is, of course, also very grounded in biological theory, in animal behavior. It's all persuasion, right? The male persuading the female to accept him, or the other way around. I guess a deer, right, strutting to persuade the predator that, hey, I'm really healthy and strong. There's no way you can catch me. It's just be a waste of both of our energy, right? So it's all communication. It's all persuading. And so bear that in mind, yeah, that your goal, this is my point of view, okay, that the goal of communication is to persuade, right? And as science, as scientists, or when you want to do science communication, how then do you do this persuasion? How then do you do this intellectual and emotional, deliver both the intellectual and emotional aspects of that communication to reach, to deliver the impact that you want, right? This harks back to my, scientist days, right? When I think about it, as scientists, right, we are presenting arguments, right? I have a hypothesis, and actually the hypothesis would be my argument, right? And then I'm presenting the argument, and I do the experiments. I have the concrete data. I have data. That's my evidence, right? And I do it in the best way that I can, so that it's the most reliable evidence I have pertaining to this hypothesis in this situation, right? So I present the arguments supported by the most reliable evidence. And then we help our audience, whether it is other scientists or whether it is the general public, understand. We write it in a way that they can understand. And then we persuade them to believe us. And how do we do that? We present our way transparent. We show them how we did, the methods. That's where you're persuading your colleagues, right? Or other scientists. Hey, you can trust my results because this is how I got to the results, right? And you can repeat it if you don't trust me, and then you get the same thing. Well, hopefully, if you don't, then of course you won't believe me. So we are transparent, right? And so then by that, we try to win their trust. And then the one important and often misstep step that's missed out is that we have to sort of engage our audience to trigger a behavioral change, right? All this front part, right? All this argument, reliable evidence, understanding the trust and transparency, you find it in scientific papers, right? You find scientific papers. It's the last one, that behavioral change that we want to cause by triggering emotions. That one is missing in almost all scientific papers, right? But then when you speak to a policymaker, when you speak to the general public, right? That last part, it's not even last, it's just last because we often forget about it. That one, you have to put it in there. You have to put it in there. And that one is really important, right? Yeah, just bear that in mind, and then when it comes to the technique, right, of doing it, so what I've shared so far, now that I've done it, it seems like it's quite a lot and going all over the places. But if you put it down into like a map, right, they actually complement each other, right? Some are the attitudes that you need to take when you do your communication. Top up, you know that you have to, it's to persuade your audience, and you do that by, you know, being transparent. You win their trust, and to deliver and your goal is to persuade them to trust you, so that they can make better informed decisions of their lives, right? And to do that, you have to engage them on the intellectual and the emotional level. And sort of like a principle throughout this whole process is this one here that I feel is very, very important and often very difficult to do. And you will encounter this problem when you communicate your projects or your results to the general public, right? Is how do you make it understandable? You know, you did 3 years of work, and then how do you translate it into, I don't know, like simple language in 3 minutes, right? So that people can understand it and then they can feel for it. My principle, my guiding principle is simply to simplify it, but do not mislead, right? It's actually not so simple to do. Sometimes when we simplify it, we make the error of misleading people. So, but try your best to simplify it. Simplify you must, right? Because otherwise, it's just too much for people to digest, and they will go away and they won't read it, or they won't even digest, they won't even watch it. Even if it's a nice video, they won't watch it because it's too much, right? But then you cannot mislead. This is something that very often we see activists or sort of like some of the conservation groups they do, including some in Malaysia. They simplify things a lot because they need to do that, right? Otherwise, people just don't understand. But then they mislead, and you won't know it was misleading unless you know the real legislation, unless you know the details. Then you can easily spot the misleading statements that were made, right? So my advice to you is not to do that. Not to do that.
What's an example, Yao-Hua?
Let's leave it to the end. Let's leave it to the end when maybe we won't be recording. Okay. Ask me again at the end. Okay. So what you need to decide when you do communication, right, is these three things, right? These three things. The message that you wish to deliver, right? So this is coming down to the more like the nitty-gritty part of it already, right? When you're actually sitting down and you are framing your communication strategy, sort of, right? What's the message that you need to deliver, that you want to deliver, whom you are delivering to, and then based on the message and audience, then you strategize how you wish to do it, right? How you can best do it, the format, right? A call to action, it's the thing that you want, you know. If you're able to trigger a behavioral change, then you leave a suggestions for what the readers can do, or you know, what they can do or what they can choose to do. As a scientist, last time, I almost never use a call to action because I found it so activist-like. Even now as a journalist, I don't really always use a call to action, but there are many journalists that do, and there are value to it, right? I cannot refute that there's value to it, but it's just that me personally, I still feel kind of the neutral kind of a school. So I don't often leave a call to action in my articles. But for your project, right, for many conservationists, it is very important to have a call to action, right? So I'll leave this here for you. Sometimes, I think most often, for me, it's always the message that comes first, right? Because I have results first. I stumble upon something new, maybe an expose or something, and that's the message that I want to deliver. Then I think of whom I want to deliver it to. Is it the general audience? Is it the policy makers? Is it my wife? And then I think of, based on the message and the audience, I think of the format to do it, right? And of course, if the audience is different, then the most optimal, the most effective format would definitely be different. But sometimes it's the audience that comes first. The message could be, you can change the message anytime based on the audience, right? Sometimes it's the audience that comes first. For example, you only have this one big message, right? And then you will change it every time you meet a different audience. Or for example, you are suddenly given a chance to speak with the Prime Minister or the Menteri Besar, right? You're stuck in the lift with the Menteri Besar, right? And for whatever reason, the lift got stuck, right? Then now you have 2 hours. Suddenly you have this audience in front of you. Then you decide on your message. You are at the talk or you are at the conference, right? So different audience, then you can change your message. But for me, it's almost always the message first and then the audience. And when it comes to the format, right? If you think in terms of the platform that you use, social media, print, TV, there are like so many different platforms, and I'm totally not an expert on this. I think I suck big time when it comes to social media, so I think you guys are way better on it. So I'll leave it there. The language and tone is important. Based on your audience, right? It's totally different speaking to or writing for a 7-year-old, 9-year-old compared to a 17-year-old compared to a 60-year-old, right? It's totally different. The tone is different. If it's a sad story, but you want it to be encouraging, inspiring, the tone is different. If it's a very infuriating story and you want to really trigger that anger, then the tone is also different, right? If it's anyway, you get the idea. The visuals that we use, which means the graphics or the data presentation that we use, all that would change based on your audience, right? Again, so here's just an example of what we can do to simplify but not mislead. For science journalists, right? When we read this paper, this title, right? Like, I don't even, well, reading it itself is difficult, right? Activity-dependent degradation of the mesentome by the neuronal membrane proteasome. I don't even know where's the verb, what's the subject, what's the verb, what's the object. It's difficult. I'm going to give you guys maybe 30 seconds. Can you try to simplify this? You just do it on your own. Just 30 seconds. You try to simplify this if you can. Yeah. If you guys want, try to type it out in the chat. Let's see what you guys have. You probably need to know what are some of these things, right? Proteasome, for example, mesentome. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, neuron protein degrading symptom through activity. Okay, just some science experiment conducted based on activities. Okay, that's great. Okay. Well, but when it comes to degradation, we can write breakdown, right? We don't have to write degradation. We can say breakdown or even degrade itself. I don't kind of like it. You can write breakdown. Neuron, for example, maybe say nerve. You can just say nerves, right? But here's how an expert did it, which I thought was great. Here's how they did it. Right? Take a minute to read this. Now, this, right, you can forget about the original title. You can forget about the paper's title because it won't be mentioned again in this press release. But what they did here, what the person who wrote this press release did was just to tell you the function of it, but and then they relate it to something that we are very familiar with, garbage disposal, right? We can of course say clean up or whatever it is, but everyone knows garbage disposal. So they just use that. I think the thing is to simplify it as garbage disposal, which is actually correct, right? Because it removes the waste in the cell. This is a process that removes the waste in the cell. And then they're telling you that it's not only important for that, but it also helps to protect, it helps to, it works on nerve development too, right? Some of the most important proteins to neuronal development. So for me here, the term garbage disposal is a very good example of simplify but not mislead, right? Okay, so that's the realm that you have to think about. How do I take something that is very complex, right? Like degradation of the nascent tome, right? How do I take that, simplify it, but do not mislead? So you have to think of what is the real essence of the message that you want to deliver here. What's the essence of this term that you want that would be most meaningful to the readers in delivering your message? Well, this is a protein that get rid of the waste in your cells, right? Then okay, that's actually simple enough, right? Protein that get rid of waste in the cell. Then how do you make it relatable to the common people? Like, who has ever seen protein in the cell? Like, no. Okay, I have, but most people have not, right? So then you write it in terms of the garbage disposal. And that's so much easier to read. So remember this example sort of in your future work when you want to simplify but do not mislead. Yeah, simplify but do not mislead. Let's run through some other examples. For example, say your message is plastic is killing nature. I'm not saying that this is the correct or the right message to say. I'm just giving as an example, right? Plastic is killing nature. Let's say our audience now is children. How then would you change this message to make it optimal and easily acceptable, understandable for children? Think about it. I thought about it, of course. You can think about it. In fact, why don't you try writing it? If you want to deliver this message to children, like how would you sort of like change this message now? Okay, plastic can choke teddy bears. Plastic is a bad guy. Okay. Some of your toys will affect the future. Plastic is a no-no. No. My mom has never said that to me. My parents has never said no to me. Okay, but I get that. Toys, right? We use toys, teddy bears, bad guy, good guy. So very simplistic, but it would work for children in their world. Okay. For me, I thought, okay, animals choke on plastic litter. So using the same things that you guys use, choke, because children would have, their parents would have told them, don't play on this, you don't put it in your mouth because it can kill you, it can choke you. So I'm using that. Of course, plastic litter won't be like a message they understand. You just have to tweak that a bit. But just on the first round, this will be how I would customize it. And then what's the format that we would use for children? What kind of format? Like what platform or in what form would you deliver this message? How would you do it? Again, you can write it in the chat. Storybook, puppet show. Puppet show is great. In fact, it's great. Puppet show is great. Yeah, drawings, right? Something that that is, I guess, colorful and engaged on them. Something visual. Yeah. For me, I would like to try comic. I like to try comic. Yeah, because I read comics when I was young and I kind of liked it. I spent a lot of time reading comics. Of course, it's also visual, so it's definitely along the same lines that you guys deliver, right? So let's try another one. What if you are targeting island visitors? People, tourists who come to the island. How would you deliver this message then? How would you do it? What would your message be? Your holiday is a tragedy. Oh, okay. That's okay. You can try that. Probably. I think you're probably joking. Yeah. If you tell people that your holiday is a tragedy, I think that will turn people off very fast. Plastic destroys your vacation view. Yeah. So that if they are visitors, they want to get great views, they want to enjoy their time, right? Get value for their money. And if it's a nice experience, they want to come back again and have the same, if not better, experience, right? So if you tell them that plastic is going to destroy that experience, I think that might work. So I was going to say more plastic, less fish, right? Because if they go to coral reefs, they want to see fish. If I go to Redang Marine Park, I want to see fish, right? But if there's a lot of plastic litter, there will be less fish to see. I'm not even sure if this is true. I'm just saying it's here. I assume it is true, right? So I just put it here. And a format could be a talk, right? For a talk, a bit misleading. Okay, so then scrap that. This is me without having done my proper research. So if I'm going to deliver this, it could be a talk on for the island visitors on the park itself, or when they disembark from the boat. It could be the first talk that I give to them, right? So that at least they don't throw their plastic into the sea or on my island. Okay. Put your plastics away or ruin your holiday. Oh, that's awesome. It even rhymes. That's great. That's great. Yeah, better still if it rhymes, right? But that's already literary. We won't get into that today. Yeah, but great if it rhymes. Okay. We only have a few minutes left. But let's try to do this exercise in the 6 minutes that we have left. We're gonna break you guys into 3 groups, right? I think three each, and do this exercise, right? You are all scientists. I'll just say that you're all scientists, and a developer wants to build an airport. Now you have evidence to show that the construction and this airport would really really hurt the environment and perhaps the people on the island itself. Now you want to communicate this in a way that could sort of help the people take action to avoid such a consequence. So in these 3 groups, one group would be targeting the state government. One group will target teenagers. One group will actually target the population on the island itself, on Tioman Island, people who are living on Tioman Island, assuming there are people who accept or do not accept this airport, right? So 3 groups: state government, teenagers, and then the islanders itself on the island. So yeah, so can we break into 3 groups? And then in the 3 groups, in probably 2 to 3 minutes, come up with a message and then how you want to deliver that message to your target audience. Serena?
Okay, so
here's how we're going to do. Maybe you could stop sharing screen and
Oh, yes.
stop recording for the moment.